Hello, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute Fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. It is currently the evening of December 14, 2023 in the United States, the morning of December 15, 2023 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, the Qatari Al-Arabi Al-Jadid newspaper reported today that there is ongoing negotiations between Israel and Hamas to complete a new hostage exchange deal. According to reports in Israel, the assumption is that the negotiations will come to fruition in the coming days, and Israel has decided not to initiate expediting them in order to not appear weak when coming to negotiations. And this might be behind the decision in Israel when the head of the Mossad, Dadi Barnea, wanted to travel to Qatar for these negotiations, that the war cabinet did not allow him to do so. Other reports suggested that Israel approached the Egyptian intelligence minister to negotiate a new deal in the last coming days. DPA news agency also quoted a prominent Hamas member who, while remaining anonymous, stated that there are serious talks about a pause in the fighting that is being mediated by Qatar, Egypt, and the U.S., that there will be no hostage exchange until the pause is in effect. What we're seeing from this is that there is likely to be reports of a new deal in the coming days, possibly within a week, and we will see that this may lead to a truce and more hostage exchange. Other news that came in moments before recording this, the body of one of the hostages that was being held in the Gaza Strip was recovered by the IDF. This is someone who was known to have been killed already on October 7th, leaving the number of hostages currently in the Gaza Strip at 134. Moving on to the fighting in the Gaza Strip, there were rockets and mortars today sent from the Gaza Strip primarily towards the southern parts of Israel. Rockets targeted the areas of Ofakim, the surrounding Gaza areas, near Yitzhak, Kisufim, Nirim, and among others, Ein HaShosha as well. Regarding fighting inside the Gaza Strip, in Jabalia refugee camp there were substantial gun battles and confrontations reported between the IDF and different Hamas operatives, including RPG and missile firing against the IDF soldiers. The Air Force was heavily involved in the ground operations as well, and there were very intensive air bombings reported both in Jabalia refugee camp, Beit Hanun, and Beit Lahia. In Beit Lahia itself, the IDF continued its activity at the Kamal Adwan hospital. In the last several days, the IDF had been surrounding the hospital and stating that it is being used by Hamas for military purposes. The hospital administration said that this was not the case. The IDF eventually moved into parts of the hospital. In different images that came out, it was seen that there were over 70 Palestinians that exited the hospital with their hands up. Many of them were armed and carrying weapons. They were arrested. Within the hospital, there were reported several gun battles between the IDF and Hamas operatives as well. In Sajaiya, in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, the IDF continued its activity, focusing on the southeastern parts of the neighborhood. In addition, in a school that was being used as one of the main headquarters of the Hamas's Sajaiya brigade, there was intensive gun battles and it was eventually taken over by the IDF and destroyed. Moving on to the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, in Khan Yunis, there were intensive gun battles reported in the heart of the city, with 7 IDF soldiers who were badly injured. These include Colonel Shachar Barkai, who is also of the Golani Brigade. The IDF reported that it uncovered 2 more tunnel entrances and launching sites, and there was a lot of gun battles that were reported in the areas surrounding Khan Yunis, particularly in the northeastern parts. Other news, the IDF published a video today in which Hamas operatives were shown that they were killed inside a tunnel, stating this was done with new attack strategies. Different reports suggested that possibly the IDF had rigged the tunnel with explosives or possibly other different chemicals. Unclear. IDF spokesperson stated that the IDF planted devices and was waiting for the right time to activate them. The tunnels was reportedly in northern parts of the Gaza Strip, likely in Gaza City. Other news, the IDF published today leaflets within the Gaza Strip offering rewards for information leading to the arrest of the Hamas leadership. Specifically, the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Yahya Sinwar, was offered $400,000 for any information that will lead to his arrest. Mohammed Sinwar, his brother, $300,000. Rafah Salameh, one of the most key figures in the Hamas movement in the Gaza Strip, $200,000. And Mohammed Def, the leader of the Hamas's military wing, Al-Qassam brigades, $100,000. The leaflets were published throughout the entire Gaza Strip with all kinds of messages to Palestinians saying these are the people who brought about death and destruction on Gaza Strip, and if you manage to give any information that will lead to their arrest, guaranteed secrecy and these cash rewards. Regarding casualties, 1 IDF soldier is reported to have been killed in the last 24 hours and 37 injured throughout the Gaza Strip, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers who were killed since the invasion of the Gaza Strip began to 118. The Palestinian Health Ministry is reporting that 179 Palestinians were killed in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of Palestinians that have been killed in the Gaza Strip, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, to 18,787, and upwards of 50,900 Palestinians are reported injured. There are also reported 8,000 to 9,000 still buried under the rubble of the buildings that have been destroyed in the Gaza Strip. Moving on to the humanitarian situation, there are increasing reports of growing hunger in the Gaza Strip, primarily in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip where the majority of internally displaced people are. Philip Lazzarini today, the head of UNRWA, stated that hunger conditions in the Gaza Strip are worsening and that aid trucks are being stopped and people are raiding them and eating straight out of them. He added that it is difficult to bring aid into shelters due to the overcrowding of people and the storming of trucks that is happening. Also, different reports of different agencies are reporting that more and more sites are being seen where people haven't eaten for 2 or 3 days in the different refugee camps. Other news related to the humanitarian situation, President Biden today was asked if he wants Israel to scale back its attacks on the Gaza Strip, following the statements of the National Security Advisor in Israel. He responded that he wants Israel to focus more on protecting civilian lives, still go after Hamas, but be more careful. Relating to this, the U.S. National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, visiting Israel today, asked Netanyahu to open the Kerem Shalom crossing for the entrance of aid trucks. So this is a crossing in the most southern tip of the Gaza Strip, in the point between Israel, Egypt, and the Gaza Strip. It has been closed since October 7th. Prior to October 7th, most aid trucks entering the Gaza Strip entered through Kerem Shalom. In the last several days, Israel has approved to inspect trucks in Kerem Shalom. And a few days ago, it was suggested in the United States that Israel, in the next coming days, is going to adhere to a U.S. request in order to open the Kerem Shalom crossing. Today, that request was made. Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel said Israel is considering it. Other news related to the humanitarian situation. Following statements in the last few days, Switzerland today officially stopped its funding of UNRWA. This was a move that was highly commended by Israel, and in turn, UNRWA says this is going to make it that much more difficult to provide aid to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Other news, a team of doctors and aid workers in the Gaza Strip told Reuters today that the outbreak of diseases in the refugee camps, and primarily the makeshift refugee camps that have propped up in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, are inevitable due to the conditions and lack of safe drinking water and food. And the question now is, how bad will it be? Regarding the entrance of aid trucks, there are initial reports suggested 100 aid trucks carrying food, water, and medical supplies entered the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. This number is lower than was expected given the trends in the last couple of days. However, again, I state the reports that said this is an initial report, so more may have entered in the last few hours, as well as 4 fuel tankers carrying presumably 129,000 liters of fuel. That seems to be the amount that is agreed upon between the sides. Moving on to the West Bank today, the IDF concluded its operation in Jenin, and primarily the Jenin refugee camp, which lasted for over 60 hours. The IDF reported that its forces scanned hundreds of structures and questioned multitudes of people, 60 of whom were arrested and sent to the Shabak for questioning. In addition, over 50 weapons were confiscated, and hundreds of explosive devices and money for trafficking weapons was found, as well as 10 tunnel entrances that were uncovered, 7 explosive labs, and 5 lookout stations. 10 Palestinians were reported killed in this operation, and scores more injured in different confrontations that occurred with the IDF over the last 3 days, as well as some of them that were killed in airstrikes that were done in the camp as a result of this operation. 7 IDF soldiers are reported to have been injured, 5 of them lightly. Other news related to the West Bank, following the U.S. and Belgium, the United Kingdom announced today that it is also going to deny entry to extreme settlers, calling on Israel to curtail their activity. So this is a growing trend in the last couple of days. While the EU has made a lot of statements about possibly doing this, the United Kingdom today announced that it is in fact going to put that into effect. In other news, the Wall Street Journal today reported that the U.S. is stalling a shipment of over 27,000 guns destined for the Israeli police force out of fear that they will end up in the hands of extremist settlers. According to the report, Israel guaranteed to the U.S. that they will not end up in the hands of settlers and will only be used by the police. However, it hasn't supplied enough proof of that, and thus, while the deal has been made, it is waiting for President Biden's official approval, and this is being stalled for over a month. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, there were continuous rockets and missiles sent from Lebanon towards Israel. RPGs targeted the Shtula area, the Koach Juncture, Kibbutz Yiftach, and near Kiryat Shmona in the Upper Galilee, as well as areas in Kfar Giladi and Tel Chai in the Western Galilee. IDF retaliation included warplanes that attacked Hezbollah infrastructure and different military compounds, as well as ground units and artillery that fired towards units sending RPGs. There were also several gun battles that were reported in the different IDF outposts, however, no information was given. In addition, the IDF reported earlier in the day that it initiated an air raid operation. This means it was not just retaliating to different launches of Hezbollah, but in fact it initiated an operation against a wide range of Hezbollah targets. Al-Manar, which is the network that's affiliated with Hezbollah, stated that substantial bombing was heard in the Taiba village in the southern parts of Lebanon, causing a blackout in the area. Other reports also suggested the IDF retaliation were primarily in the Itaron village. Again, unclear what the targets were at this time. Historically, when these initiated operations occur, usually within 24 hours, we find out what they were targeting. Moving on to some of the regional developments, British naval security company Ambre today published an assessment that an incident in which a ship sailing under the banner of Hong Kong was damaged involved a missile that was launched by the Houthis earlier today. Reports vary if the explosion occurred on board or on sea, however the reports are that the crew is safe. Related to this, possibly, the Houthi military stated that its navy carried out several military operations, one of them against the Maris Gibraltar, which the Houthis stated was on its way to Israel and did not adhere to instructions of the Yemeni Navy. The Houthi military said that it was hit by a drone and that the Houthis are going to continue to stop any ships that are destined for Israel. The company operating the ship, however, stated that it was not hit by a drone. Al Jazeera also reported that the Houthis forced a ship to divert towards a port in Yemen. This may be that same ship. It may be when the Houthis said that the ship did not adhere to instructions. This is what Al Jazeera was reporting on, or possibly this is a different ship. We are seeing substantial escalations of the Houthi attacks in the last couple of days, as the United States is still working on developing this international maritime force in order to secure safe passage of ships through the region. To a different region, the Pentagon today reported that there have been 97 attacks with missiles and drones against U.S. targets throughout the Middle East over the last 2 months since October 7th. Relating specifically to the missile attack that occurred against the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, it was reported that while several people have been arrested by the Iraqi police, there's also growing friction between the United States and Iraq, as different officials in Iraq have suggested that the U.S. should evacuate the embassy and leave Iraq, while the U.S. does not plan to do that. So as more regional developments are occurring in Yemen and in Iraq. Moving on to the political general trends the last 24 hours, as I say, the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has arrived in Israel yesterday and met with Prime Minister Netanyahu and with the war cabinet. He stated that the U.S. wants Israel to switch to low-intensity combat within the next 3 weeks, warning of a loss of international legitimacy for the war to continue as it has been continuing so far. So we have heard rumors in the last week that the United States is planning to not give a deadline to Israel for the war, but give a deadline to Israel in terms of its bombing campaigns and the intensity of the fighting. Today, according to reports, that was explicitly stated by the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. According to what was stated, the vision of the United States, as was echoed in the New York Times as well, is that this new phase of the war will involve elite forces sent on special operations, such as rescuing hostages, locating and possibly assassinating Hamas leadership, and destroying tunnels. Sullivan also reportedly posed difficult questions to Israel regarding the day-after plan, specifically noting that Netanyahu and Israel have not presented the United States with an official day-after plan. What is their vision for the future of the Gaza Strip, and thus Jake Sullivan heavily pressured Israel on this. Responding to this, Prime Minister Netanyahu stated in a press conference that he's very thankful for all the support, both diplomatic and material, that the U.S. provides Israel, however, that Israel will continue the war until all our goals are achieved. Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant also met with Jake Sullivan and stated to him that it will take more than a few months to destroy Hamas. More political turmoil was reported out of Israel's war cabinet as a result of these meetings, as Minister Gantz stated that Israel's leadership must discuss what will happen after the war, and not only what won't happen. Specifically relating to Netanyahu, he added that some elements in Israel's government are creating unnecessary disagreements and friction with the United States. Other political developments, the president of International Red Cross, Mariana Spolarich, met today in Israel with the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Minister of Health, and other officials, as well as with family members of those Israelis that are held hostage in the Gaza Strip. The meeting was reportedly very tense. Family members gave the head of the Red Cross the medicines that their family members who are held hostage do not have access to. The Prime Minister also gave her a box full of medicines, stated to her, find ways to get these to the hostages. At the end of the meeting, Spolarich called on Hamas to allow the Red Cross to visit hostages and for the immediate release of all hostages in the Gaza Strip. Moving on to speculations regarding the future of the Gaza Strip, the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, after his meetings in Israel today, is going to tomorrow travel to Ramallah in order to meet with Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas. Leading up to these meetings, senior U.S. official praised the Palestinian Authority today and their security forces, stating that those who were trained by the United States have done outstanding in preventing Hamas violence in the West Bank after October 7th. Jake Sullivan is reportedly going to speak to Abbas about efforts to strengthen the Palestinian Authority, and this combines with a different statement that was made by a U.S. official, saying that the Palestinian Authority security forces can form the basis of a future force that will be in the Gaza Strip in a few months after the war. In addition, news relating to the future of the Gaza Strip, responding to the political turmoil I mentioned moments ago, Minister Gantz today related to the future of the Gaza Strip after he criticized Netanyahu of not giving a vision. He gave his own. He stated, and I'm quoting, "Hamas is part of the axis that wants to destroy us, and we need to strengthen our relationship with moderate Arab states to create a different reality that will include a solution for Gaza. When the mission in the southern parts of the Strip is complete, we will create a complete security control over the region, including holding territory that will allow us to carry out security operations. Israel will hold on to freedom of operations and exercise it on the ground. What happens in Han Yunis and Sajaiya will be no different than the Kasbah of Nablus, i.e. the situation in the West Bank when nominally there is Area A which the Palestinian Authority controls, however Israel invades it as it sees fit for its security purposes. Minister Gantz is stating, what happens in Han Yunis and Sajaiya is not going to be different than the situation of the Kasbah and Nablus." He continued, I'm quoting, On the civilian level, what's right is to involve local leadership that will handle civilian matters, supported by an administration that will be assembled primarily of moderate Arab countries, some of whom have already agreed to participate in this effort. So this relates to one of the visions that was initially stated by Israel, that there will be some sort of control of either different Arab states or funding of different Arab states for local leadership in the Gaza Strip. This appears to be at least Minister Gantz's vision. Other news relating to the future of the Gaza Strip. The deputy leader of Hamas today abroad, Musa Abu Marzouk, stated in an interview that in an attempt to end Palestinian divisions, Hamas will have to recognize the official Palestinian position, which is that of the PLO, who recognizes Israel. He added that Hamas should follow that, and that Israelis have rights as well, just that they don't have those rights at the expense of others. These statements are critically important, as they come a day after Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh stated that Hamas is open to all discussions regarding how to unify the Palestinian people, and it comes several days after Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mohammed Ashtiyah stated that Hamas should be part of the PLO and a junior partner in the future development of a Palestinian leadership. So what we are seeing is that different elements of the Palestinian leadership, also those in the Palestinian Authority dominated by the PLO, and also those in Hamas, are at least trying to signal that there might be ways that they can find common ground and come together. Musa Abu Marzouk's statements specifically are a very far stretch from Hamas's official claim. Later on in the day, Marzouk put out a clarification, stating that his statements were misunderstood, and he added, I'm quoting, "Hamas does not recognize the legitimacy of Israeli occupation and does not accept giving up any of our Palestinian people's rights. We confirm that the resistance will continue until the liberation and return, i.e. the destruction of Israel and return of all Palestinian refugees." It is noteworthy that Musa Abu Marzouk specifically stated similar things in the past already, that Hamas will have to de facto recognize Israel's right to exist if it wants to be part of the Palestinian Authority. However, this has never been adopted by Hamas. It is also important to note that Musa Abu Marzouk and Ismail Haniyeh are the leaders of Hamas officially. However, they are the leaders of Hamas that are abroad. They are both in Doha and Qatar, and also spend a lot of time in Lebanon. And while officially they are the leadership, the situation has radically changed in the last several months, and the leadership in Gaza has to large extents superseded the leadership abroad. Yahya Sinwar is now pretty much in control of what is happening to the Hamas movement, and there are even reports that part of the difficulties in negotiations of any hostage deals is that the leadership abroad used to be able to speak for Hamas. However, now they're having a much more difficult time because they constantly need to negotiate with Hamas in Gaza. What are they willing to do? So while these statements are important for the future, unclear right now how much they actually affect Hamas on the ground. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.